Mic check. Can you guys hear me? I think you guys can hear me. I think you are speaking, but I can't hear you. Okay, let me see. I think you guys are speaking, but I can't hear you. Oh, it switched. Default. Switch back to. Alright, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, perfect.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank God. Hey, there are so many people that want to join. Hey, why did I go and use Google Meet? I can't even admit them. Oh well, first 100 there. I beg turn off this thing, the auto connect to this thing. It don't push me out again. Your headset. Yeah.
Then disconnect you.
Yes, disconnect my mic. Okay. Right. I can't admit more people. I can't admit more. Okay. Alright. So yeah, I'm hoping you guys can hear me. So the reason we're actually having this call today, I want to talk about spacing and grids. But in reality, grids is a component applying your spacing values. The reason I made that tweet earlier today, a friend sent me a design to review, and she was using 12 columns, 12 number of columns. Then I forgot what value she was using for her gutter and her margin. And often I see designers use layered grids, and they are not even sure why they are using the values they are using. If you ask them why using 16 columns or 8 columns or 12 or 6 columns or why using 64 margin, they are not always very sure why they are doing that, right? Probably just saw that online and they are going with the flow. And a lot of people don't really know how to use spacing. Once they've done their layered grid, that is it. They are done applying spacing to their design, right? That is where it starts and that's where it ends. And spacing is usually more than that. So yeah, that's what I have in this call. So I walk you guys through on how to create your spacing values, how to intentionally apply those spacing values. Intentionally in the sense that if they ever ask you why isn't 8 here, why isn't 16, 32, 64, 12, 14, right? You're able to defend your decisions, right? And able to defend the choices. So the way I go about it, let me see, can I admit more people? I don't think I can. Okay. So the way I go about it is you can do it, I think 2 ways. I usually do it 2 ways. Either is the golden ratio. There are so many people trying to join this call. Either is the golden ratio when I'm trying to create my spacing values, or I use geometric progression. It sounds like big English, but I'll just show you how to do it in a very simple way. So I don't know if I need to jump to Figma, but let me jump to Figma. Yeah, this is like a base I use. So let me just create a new one called Playground. Okay, so most designers I've seen, the way they create their spacing scale is usually very linear. So first, they start with 2. Okay, let me just make this big so it's very visible. First, they usually start with 2 and they do it linearly. So 2 plus 2, 4, 4 plus 2, you have 16. So you have 6 rather. 6 plus 2, 8, 10. Alright, remember the first step is to get your spacing values down. 12, 14, right, 16, 18, 20, yeah, and they keep going like that till they get to probably 120 something or 2 something. And the problem with this is, naturally, when you have too many choices, it's very difficult for you to make a decision. A very good example is when you're trying to buy a phone and you have enough money, you probably don't have a budget. It's usually very difficult for you to choose what phone you're going to use, right? The same principle applies to spacing. When you have too many spacing values and you're generating them linearly, it's difficult for you to decide how to apply this to your design, right? So I have a card here and I have the card here. How do I determine what spacing should be between them? I can decide to try 12. Can decide to try 12. I can decide to try 14. I can decide to try 16. This is taking me too much time already. And the truth is, 12, 14, 16, the difference is not so much. Actually, 10, 12, 14, 16, the difference is not so much, right? And when you spend too much time trying to make these little decisions, you are costing the company more money, right? And you're wasting time adjusting spacing, time that would probably better spend doing other things. So a very good way for you to generate your spacing values is to use geometric progression. geometric progression in the sense that first thing first, you select a base value, which is usually 2, right? I usually use 2. Then you select a multiple, and my multiple is usually 2. Okay, so if I'm trying to generate my spacing values, so what I'll do is basically 2 times 2, 4. 4 times 2 give me 8. 8 times 2, I have 16. Sorry, I have 16. 16 times 2, I have 32. I have 64. I have 1 to 8. I usually stop at 1 to 8. You can do 1 to 8 times 2 to be 256, but you really use that value. Okay, so let me just distribute spacing so you can better see that. Yes, so now I have just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 values, and I'll probably be using just these 6. Okay, so now how do I apply this to my design? Now that I have very few choices, it's easier for me to make decisions when I'm trying to apply spacing to my design. So for example, I have a layout grid. This is my layout grid, for example. Okay, this is my layout grid. So I add layout grid. I usually like using columns, right? Say this is a website, for example. My number of counts is 16, so I'll come here. Right, I'm taking this from my spacing value, will be 16 for desktop. My margin will be 64 for my spacing value, and my gutter will be 32. If anybody asks me how did I get this value, I'm able to defend them. I probably generated them using a geometric progression, using 2 as a base, then a common ratio of 2, and that's how I got this. Okay. If I was doing for mobile, for example, say I was doing for mobile, okay, so I'll add the layout grid, same thing, column. Number of columns will be 8, okay. My margin will be 32, and my gutter will most likely be 16. And that's how I generate for this. But if you don't like using 2, okay, and you probably want to use 3 as a base, same principle applies. So 3 times 2, 6 times 2, 12 times 2, 24 times 2, 48 times 2, 96. Right, I think this is what Bootstrap uses. Is it not Bootstrap? Not very sure. Then 96 times 2 would be probably 192. Not very sure. I think that's it. Okay. So by default, I think Figma they're using multiple of 5. Let me just be very sure. So let's see, if I click on layout grid and I come to column, let's see, 5, 20. I think there's multiple of 5. 5 times 2, 10. 10 times 2, 20. 20 times 2, 40. I think there's multiples of 5, right? So 5 is sort of like their base, right? Most people prefer using 3, right? So if I'm using 3, my layout grid is going to look something like this. So I might say 12. So if you're using 12, this is obviously why you're using 12, but you're not very sure why you're using 12. I might say my margin should be 96, and I might say my gutter should be 24. Right? If I don't like 24, I can say 48. And this is the reason why they use these values. These values you usually pick online. This is the reason why they're using these values. Right? They're usually getting them from a skill they've created. Can I let more people in? Is that possible? Nope, it is not. Ouch. So it depends on what you want. You can also use 4, right? You can use 4 as your base. 4 times 2 will be 8. 8 times 2 will be 16. 16 times 2 will be 32. Right? But the thing with using 4 is you're basically just starting from here and you're going like this. Right? It's usually 2, 3, 5. Right? But I'm mostly using 2 anyway. And that's how I get my spacing values. So now that I have very few choices, it's easier for me to make decisions on how to apply this. If you are generating this linearly, you're using 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, generating linearly, when it comes to applying these guys, it's going to be very difficult for you to choose. Because now you have very linear values that are very long. If you are doing this linearly, probably before you get to 1 to 8, you probably have more than 50 spacing values. How do you apply those? Okay, so now if you are now sure that this is the value you want to use, like I mentioned, it's very difficult for you to start with. First you start with 2. 2 times 2, 4. 4 times 2. It's not very difficult for you to memorize, right? 8 times 2. Basically just multiply your current number by 2, multiply the next value you get by 2, and keep going like that. probably to end at 64 or 128, it just depends on you. Now, something I like doing is I like naming this just the way when we are creating text styles, right? We usually name this header, H1 display, H2, H3, H4, H5, body, button, caption, grid 0 to 100, things like that. That's how you also name your spacing values, right? So that way it's easier for you to communicate spacing with your engineers and your designers, and it's also easier for you to create your design token architecture for this your spacing. So ideally you'd want to start with 16 as your base, right? Then you work your way back and forward. Right, starting with 16 as a base, I'll use the t-shirt sizing, which is basically I'll say 16 is medium sized, it's a medium spacing. 32 is large, L. 64 is XL, extra large, and this will be extra large or double large. So A to B, small. Okay, 4 will be extra small, then 2 basically XXX, which is extra small. So now if I'm telling a designer, I'm telling an engineer, the spacing between those two cards should be large, they would know instantly I'm talking about 32. If I say the spacing between my tables should be extra large, they know I'm talking about 64. I said this way it's easier for you to communicate your spacing values, right? And when you mention these vocabularies, instantly they know what you're talking about, right? We use this later when we are trying to create our token architecture like this. Okay, I'll be back to that. Okay, now we have our spacing values, we have a naming convention for them, right? We've applied this to a grid, right? How do I apply this spacing throughout my design? There are other ways for you to apply spacing. So first you have insets. So inset is basically something like this. Usually it's inset for your button. So inset is, let's have a text that says button. Let me just apply style to it. Let's say I have button somewhere. Button, where are you? Yes, we have button. I have to zoom in. Right. Immediately I press Shift A and I apply auto layout to this. What auto layout is doing instantly is inserting this button. Inserting in the sense that it's basically applying spacing around this button. Okay, so when you are working on mostly dashboard, right? I think I was on one right now. You're working on the dashboard. Usually what you do is you insert these cards, right, using one of your spacing value. Like I say, for very large cards I want the insert to be 16. Right now, if we, let me close this. If I use my CSS paper, let me see, would I be able to get that? I am not able to get, yeah, I can get that. So if I use my CSS paper, let's see. Okay, Jano is in an insert. It's like there isn't a stretch, insert stretch. Okay, so ideally when you hover your mouse on this, right, you can check out if there isn't an insert. Right now there's in 33 on both sides, 108 on top and bottom, right? This is looking like an insert stretch. Let's see, let's check out this guy. There's nothing there. Can't check out this guy, right? So ideally when you are working on dashboards and you are creating cards, I have a desktop like this. I have a desktop. Let me save this as a style. Let me see, do I have a style for my, yeah, so I'm using this for example. Okay, and I probably have 4 cards. I'll just draw one in here, give me a feel, just say it's visible, black for example. Let's try duplicating. Okay, let's say we have 2 cards. Let's just scale it out. Yeah, so before I start placing content inside, ideally I want to insert it, so I just press Shift A, right? Automatically it inserts. This is the new auto layout, horizontal and vertical padding, right? So for inserting, I'll use the same values from here, right? Let's see, let's use medium inserting for this. So this will be 16, this will be 16. Now I'll draw a card that will hold my content inside. Now you see it's adjusting with that system. Okay, now I've created an insert for this. So all my content for this card will be inside this white box. Let me turn this off. Ctrl Shift 4 to turn off your auto layout. Right, so whatever content I'm designing for this will be inside this. Okay, I can go a step further. I usually go a step further, right? I'll add a column grid inside here, right? So I add a column, probably orangish. Turn off the blue so I can see the other guy. Control Shift 4. I've messed with that. So let me see. I need a color I can see. Need a color I can see. Purple. Let me drag it up so I can see it clearly. Yeah, so I usually go a step further. I can say 8 counts. Okay. And I can probably say margin should be 8. Okay. Gutter should be 16. But this is going to disrupt my spacing scale, because right now I've done an inset of 16 around it. If I start adding 8 on both sides, which is the margin, this now the year is going to be 24. The year is going to be 24. Okay, so ideally, once I'm adding an inset, I can just take out the margin, okay, and just use the columns to guide my work. Alright, so if you're not adding an inset, say you probably don't want to use inset, or you don't know how to use inset, or you probably don't like using insets, right? Another thing you can possibly do is you just add a layered grid to this main guy. Sorry, let me remove this grid. Right, so if you don't want to use inset, you can add a layered grid if the concept of inset is confusing. I can't add a layered grid because I'm using an inset already. Yeah, so let me just take that off. So if I'm not using inset, I can add a layered grid. Okay, can add the column grid to this, and this will probably be 8. This will probably be 8. Margin will be 16. Let's make this purple too so you can see it. Increase the opacity. Okay, margin will be 16. But the problem with doing this, the reason I don't like doing this is now I have to go ahead, because it has to be spacing from top to bottom, right? It has to be top and bottom padding. Now I have to go ahead and add a row grid now. I have to add a row grid. Adding a row grid, I probably use red or pink, turn it up. Okay, I have to add a row grid, then I'll do the same thing. Margin will be 16 at the top and bottom. This is stressful for me when I can easily just take these two things out and just insert it. Alright, so insert it automatically, I have that spacing around it. Come, let me see if I can allow more people into the space. Oh yes, I can. Sweet. Admit all. First to enter. Yes. Alright, so are you guys understanding the concept so far? Is there anything I need to go through again before I proceed?
Yes,
what did you say? Okay, I should go through inset again. Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, so inset is basically adding padding around this thing, around these cards. Right? Because ideally, when you're putting content into the card, okay, there's no inset here. Ideally, when you're putting content into the card, right, your content will not start from here, right? And there has to be spacing from top to bottom, obviously, right? It's very evident in this implemented design here, right? Your content will not start from the left, extreme left, from the margin. There has to be spacing around it, right? So inset is basically just selecting a frame, right? Pressing Shift A, that's add an auto layout. Then you put your insert value, 16 left and right, you see it adjusted, 16 top to bottom, it adjusted. Now I want my content to be centered, so I just click centered. So whatever content I'm putting in here automatically will be centered, right? So now this is adjusting to my inset. Okay, inset is basically just putting padding around the shape, right? I think that's an easier way to explain it. Okay, that's one way to apply spacing, insetting. Another way to apply it is inset squish. So inset squish is something like this. Let me draw it and make this white. Let me see if I can allow more people in. Okay. Right, so now for insert squish you should mostly use a button, right? The same thing, you're adding spacing inside it, but right now when I'm adding my spacing, Shift A, right, top to bottom is usually half the size of left to right, right? So the vertical padding is half the size of the horizontal padding. So vertical padding, say for example, it's 8, okay, right? Oh sorry, vertical padding is 8, right? Horizontal will be 16, right? Which is usually what I use when I'm creating my buttons. I have something like this, right? So that way, if I start saying Control A, Control C, Control V, Control V, Control V, Control V, Control V. This is how my button is going to look like. Right. If I want it, say this is my default button, I want a larger button, for example. Okay, so since this is 16, I can say this is my larger button, 16, and this will be my large button, 32. Okay, now this is how you create small, medium, and large buttons when you are designing components. Right, applying spacing, because when you ask for what's most important in your design, they usually call the big three: color, typography, and iconography. Right, but when you go through most of these CSS libraries, apart from color, what's occurring the most is spacing. Right, and you need to know how to use spacing. Okay, I think I also have two more, and let's see, can I allow more people in? Let's join. And they'll probably be confused now that they're just joining. Now we have two more applications of spacing. Now I've explained inset and inset squish. Another example is inline, right? How do you determine the spacing between, say I have two buttons, for example, right? Say I have these two buttons. Okay, inline is basically the spacing between horizontal components or horizontal design elements. Right, now I can say this is 16. That's medium spacing. I want to be large spacing, I can say 32. Or if I need small spacing, I'll say 8. That's basically inline, right? Spacing between horizontal design elements. Then you also have vertical. This is very common when you're designing table. Okay, I design a table. Say if I'm designing a table, first thing first is to draw probably the table frame. Okay, Shift A, insert squish it. Sorry, insert. I can say 32. I can say 32. Right, that's large. Okay, I want to make sure it's centered, so these my components will be in the center. Right, so let's see. I probably want to use them. Let's try this value and see if it's going to work. Yeah, it's going to respect that. Say this is my rows for my table. Okay, now this is inline spacing, right? But I want it to be stacked, so I'll press Shift A, and I'll do stack. Stack is basically vertical spacing, and this is how I will create a data table. Right. Inline squish, inline. How am I using squish a lot? Sorry, you do insert, right? Then you create your table component, you drag it in, then you stack them, right? So you can apply spacing to your layout grid, right? To your layout grid 1. You can apply the insert, which is this. You can do insert squish for your button, which is this, which is how you create your small, medium, and large buttons. Then you can do stack, right? Stack basically on top of each other, which is basically just vertical spacing. And you can do inline, which is, well, they are inline, which is horizontal spacing. Okay, any question from me? I think I rushed through that, but I think I covered most of the important things. Any question? So you guys understood that? Hello? I can't hear whoever is speaking. Is anybody speaking?
I understood what you said.
Thank God, glory be to Jesus. Okay.
I'm sorry, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, concerning this spacing value,
Yeah.
I just want to ask, when you get to 120, can you go further than that?
Oh yeah, you can go to 256, but you rarely see a situation. You rarely see a situation where you use 256. I've never seen a situation to use 256.
Okay. Then, sorry, when you are choosing your grid, your layout grid,
Yeah.
I know like you are going to use that spacing value, but when, like, how do you differ from the margin value and the gutter value? So which will be which? I know when you choose your column, you can either start from maybe 8 or 16 or whatever. So now your margin, what will your margin be? Let's say if your column count is 8, what will your margin be and what will your gutter be? How do you like discern those two?
Oh yes, ideally, when you've created your values, you determine the rules on how you want to use those values. Right? You can decide to say, since this is 16, I don't want too much. Say this is a dashboard, for example, not a website. I don't want too much spacing left and right, so I have more spacing to fit in content on the dashboard. I can decide to say my margin should be 32. Right? I can decide to say my gutter should be 16. Right? Right. It's your job, or you will be the one to determine the rules of your spacing and documenting those rules so other designers can follow them and the devs can follow them. Right. So The whole idea behind spacing and grid is just to make sure whatever you are designing, the devs are able to replicate it. So if you are probably working on your website and you want your content to be more centered and you need more space left and right, I can decide to use 1 to 8. And I'm usually using 1 to 8, 64. Right? There are times when I don't even use 2 because I want to use 96 on my margin. So now I'm using 3 times 2, 6, 6 times 2, 12, 12 times 2, 24, 24 times 2, yeah. So now my gutter will be 24. Or I can start even say 48. Okay, so it mostly depends on you. You determine the values, right? First, you determine the scale you want to use, it 2 or 3. Once you've achieved your scale, you've established your naming convention, then you determine the rules on how you want to use them. It's mostly up to you. Okay, let's see. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, well, I want to clarify concerning the inset. How is this different from typical, I'm just applying padding because I don't know, it seems similar to me.
Oh yes,
Applying
it
padding
is similar.
around, so
It is
I don't know
similar.
what's different.
Yeah.
What's different?
No, there's no difference. There's no difference to it. So ideally, if you're applying
Okay,
pad,
I just wanted to clarify. I just wanted to clarify.
oh, there's no difference because if you're applying padding, right, you're mostly inserting. Once you just press Shift A, and you're not selecting probably this and this. When you select this and this and you press Shift A, it's not going to insert it. It's just going to have this inline spacing between them, right? And I can tell this, okay, this should be 32, right? So inserting is basically just adding padding around it. Inserting is just a formal language for it. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yes, yeah. So
Sorry, I have a question.
yes, please.
Yeah, please, I have a question.
Okay, I think Bolahan wants to speak. I don't know who's speaking first.
Okay.
I have a question.
Okay, yeah, you can ask after when he's done speaking, please.
the last part you explained, the table, you showed a table, right?
Yeah,
Let's, for example, I'm designing a desktop kind of thing, and then I'm trying to confirm the table you drew, that external part that you apply the pattern to, will you be fixed with?
let me see. Here's that
And then
table.
when you just drag, yeah, will you be fixed with? And then when you drag it in, just to avoid this extension of all content, when you drag the row in.
Ideally, I use hot content. Right? Because first, I'm usually very sure of the size of my individual data row, right? So when I'm dragging in, right, I'm usually using hot content. But when I use hot content, it's still respecting this insert padding around it. Yeah, I'm usually using hot content, but I'm not a big master when it comes to auto layouts, resizing and constraint. Right? I think Toby's on the call. He's a way better person when it comes to that. Okay. Any other question?
Yeah, so
Okay.
can you hear me?
Clearly.
Yeah, so I think 2 days ago I was reading about grid, and they were talking about responsiveness, website responsiveness, and grid system. So I don't know if you can explain more on that. I mean, while you are trying to design a responsive website or a responsive layout, you try as much as possible to use scalable grid system. So I don't know if you understand that.
Oh yeah. I understand what you're saying. So this should be. Oh yeah. Let me use 1 to 8. 1 to 8. 1 to 8, and this should be. What am I using? 32. Okay. So let's see. Scale this in. Like I mentioned, I'm not a big pro when it comes to resizing and constraints. So let's do this. Let me see. Yeah, kind of it. Okay. One is to be top. One is to be on the left. Yes, that's good. Oh, I'll probably make that middle. Yeah, so I think when you're trying to design responsive sorry, when you're trying to design a responsive platform, right? It's mostly just applying constraints when you're done applying your grids. Right, so I want this to be at the top whenever I'm scaling. I want this to be left and right. I want it to be left and right. I want this to be at the top, right? I want this to be on the left, and I want this to be inside my grid. I want this to be on the right. Should be centered. It should not be at the top. Let's say I have another card here. This will be bottom. This will be bottom. Let's see. This will center, I think. Oh, that guy's not responding. Yeah, I have to do left and right for this. But if I do just center when I'm applying a constraint for this other guy, right, you see, they are inside my grid. But this other guy, because I'm using center, right, it's just staying in the middle. So I'll probably use left and right. Oh no, left. This guy's on the left, so no matter how far I drag, it's always going to be on the left. Yeah, but I want it to scale.
Left and right.
Yeah, left and right, yeah. Just back to left and right. Yeah, so now I think this should scale. Yes. Right, so you see most of all the contents are usually still in my grid. I can easily just scale things when I'm done placing them and applying constraints. But I really do this, to be very sincere. Right, when I'm done designing this, I do a layout for mobile, I do a layout for tab, and I manually design those layouts. This is very stressful for me. But when I started designing, I did not learn how to use constraints very early. And I have this very bad behavior of designing desktop, designing tab, designing for mobile. Right? And it's stressful on my part, but it's very difficult for me to break that habit. So if you are still learning and you can easily just build this into your workflow, it's basically just putting design elements and applying constraints to them, right? How do you want them to behave when this is resizing? And you just apply that and they will behave like that when you are designing a responsive platform. Right? So if this was a tablet, I think a tablet resolution would be usually using 834, right? This would be 834, for example. This would be 834, and this would be for a tablet. If I probably want to do for a desktop, probably I'll do 1440 or 1920. If I want for a mobile, probably do something like this. But the thing with designing like this, all the elements you put inside this card, you also have to make sure that you apply constraint to them. Right, so that way they're also resizing when you're resizing this frame. I hope I answered the question. Like I mentioned, I'm not a big person when it comes to applying constraint, but I have the idea.
Thank you.
Yes.
Jared,
Yeah.
sorry, I joined late. I want to know if this class is recorded.
Yes, I'm recording. I am. Yes, I am. Thank God. When I'm done, I'll just upload to YouTube and drop the link on Twitter.
Alright, let's go.
All right. Another question. I think I'm almost out of time. Okay. If there are no other questions, that's all I have to teach on spacing and applying them to grid. Oh shit! Nope. Sorry, I almost ran away. Yes. So there are things called design token, right? And you usually have to architect how you want them to be used and written down. Okay, so think of design tokens as just variables holding values for your design elements. The design element for your design style guide, for example. So ideally, you have your text styles, you have your color styles, and you have your grid style, right? So design tokens are just variable. I can say this variable should hold this value for me. This variable should hold this value for me, and that's all design variables are. So that's all design tokens are. So I know my grid 0. No, this should not be this. Let me see. I think I dragged that to dribble, and this was under designs I've posted. And where is my baby? Where are you? Hey, sorry. I should just have designs I want to post. Okay, probably messed it up. This is not how it should look, right? So I'm usually just using the hex value. So ideally, when you are creating design tokens, you usually want to show your choices, right? Which is basically all the color values or all the color styles. Then you show decisions how those colors will be used. So most teams, what they do is instead of having things like grade 0, grade 10, grade 30, grade 40, grade 50, grade 60, they may have probably grade 0 is FC, FC, FD. Instead of saying grade 0, they may say borderline. On that person when they use grade 0, they'll say background color. Right. The problem with that is they're not showing choices and they're just jumping straight to decision, and that doesn't usually work. Other things, what they do is they do grade 0 to 100, and after that they start showing decisions, and they say probably when you have a header like this, right? After this, then you see this might be gray choices. I might say gray slash choices, for example. Okay, now I have gray, I have choices. Then they may create a new one. I can't duplicate, and that's sad. They may create a new one that will be gray slash decision. Right, so that way you can see all the choices for gray, 0 to 100. Then under decisions, you're going to see how you'll be using gray 0 throughout your design, how you're using grade 10 throughout your design, and how you're using grade 20 down to 100 throughout your design. And ideally, you do this for all the colors you have in your design, which is basically what we mean by choices and decision. Choices are all the available options for a particular color, right? The decisions is how the designer is using this throughout the design. So when you're creating your design tokens, you're creating those values. It's similar to what you do in Figma, right? Similar to what you do in Figma. This is basically me doing grade 0, right? And I'm copying the hex code and I'm pasting it here, grade 10. So I just do that for all of them. These are the actual hex values from grade 0 to 100. The next, I show my decisions. Probably for my background colors, I'm using 4 different grays. I'll say background color, default to be grade 0, light to be grade 90, dark could be grade 10, disabled to be this, right? My disabled may not even be grade 0, may not even be grade 90. My disabled may even be gray pink 90. Okay, so ideally when you're trying to create this sort of design token documentation, you usually want to write for all your colors first. So probably something like this, Ctrl V. This will probably now be maybe pink, if pink is there. Okay, then you put all the value for pink. Then say you have green, put the value for pink, for green. Then when you're done, then start showing decisions on how these colors will be used. The reason we do these design tokens, when the first time I encountered design tokens, I was looking for a way to actually change color at scale when you're designing already in production. So I was researching how do developers use the colors from our design. They just go into design and everywhere they want to decolor, they just start pasting the hex code, right? And if it's at scale, how do they change the hex code? Probably want to change their branding color from blue to maybe green. How do they change this throughout the design? And that was my first encounter with design tokens. So design tokens, if you probably want to change your background color throughout 200 pages of your design, say you're working for an enterprise and you guys have a very large application, and it's time for you guys to leave dark mode and probably go to light mode, or change your background color from charcoal black to matte black, right? All they have to do is just come into the design token in their compiler, right, and just change the value here, right, and publish, and it changes throughout the database. Right, it's same for text style, it's the same for spacing styles. When they are done implementing these your design tokens, and you guys need to make very large changes at scale, or you need to make very little changes to your product, right? See, Twitter, for example, now say I have my text for example. Let's say this is header, right? Say I have my text for example, and this is probably H1, right? I'll call this H1. Then I'll put all my text value. I'll put my font size. So for my text, I'll basically be putting all the values here. I'll put my typeface. I'll put my weight. I'll put the size. I'll put the letter spacing, the line height, paragraph. I'll put all these things in here, right? Now, if ever you need to change the font across our entire application, all we have to do here is just come in here and probably change the font from Avenue to probably Euclid Circular A, and it changes across the entire product. That's the whole concept behind design tokens. So when you're trying to write the design tokens, right, it's pretty easy. Sounds very, very big, but it's pretty easy. It's just the way you create styles in Figma, right? For H1, so say I have something, for example, say I have my H1, for example, now. For H1, I'll just click on this. The values I need is typeface, font is Avenue, weight is black. Most of them, they use weight in numbers. So this might be 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600. Right, so most of them use weight in numbers. So font is Avenue, right? So I can probably say, I'm not a dev, right? I can probably say font dash family, This will probably be avenue. Okay. Then comma, font dash weight. This will probably be 500. And I can say font dash size. Right. I'm not sure how they do this, right? But I'm pretty sure I have an idea of how they're probably going to write the code. And I can say line dash height. This would probably be 2%, for example. No, line height cannot 2%. That's crazy. I like using 145 for body text. No, this is a header text, and I'll probably use 120%. Okay, I can say letter dash spacing. This will probably be 2% if I have a letter spacing, right? And I'll do this for each of them. Now, if they ever need to call this in their design, in their code, call H1 whenever they want to do a header. And if I ever need to make changes to a H1, probably want to change the size. Oh, I don't do font. I know this would be font weight. Yeah, font size should probably be, let's say 84, for example. Now, if they ever need to change this in production, they can just come into the design token, right, and change this value manually here and update, and it changes across the entire application where H1 has been called. Sounds like gibberish, but that's the idea behind it. Yeah, so you mostly mess around with this when you're working with design system, right? And most of the JDs you see right now usually need somebody that has experience building and maintaining a design system. And if you show them you can architect a design token, your spacing is very solid, which is what most designers don't have, it's very likely for you to get to the next stage of the interview. Yes, somebody is about to ask me a question. Hey, I'm sorry I was going really fast.
Actually, not a question.
Okay.
I'm just surprised you dived into CSS.
I don't know CSS. I don't even know if the semantics are, if it's even correct. But this is ideally how you would do it, and it's not difficult because Figma is already giving us an idea of the styling, right, and what they usually do when they're calling that. So for fonts, for colors, you just need your hex code. That's the property they usually call in code. For text, you usually just need font family, weight, size, letter space, line height, letter spacing, and paragraph spacing. That's the usual value you need. Then for layout grid, for grids, what you usually be calling is, let's see, what they usually be calling is the number of columns, then margin, gutter. So you already have this, so you don't even need to know how to write code. You can even write this in Notion, but I'm just writing this to make it look fancy for when I want to post on Dribble, and this is on Dribble. So they know I know how to do design token.
This is typically CSS.
I don't know how to write CSS, but I think this is how they do it.
Drew, tell us the
Hello?
truth. Tell us the truth.
I don't write code now. You don't say me, I dey run from
Sorry,
code.
Joyce, can anybody hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, so I was going to ask. So I know there's a design token plugin on Figma.
Yes.
That kind of makes this easier, where you just include the values, and I think you can push the hub or so. For
Yeah,
them.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
just wanted to ask, this screen you just showed now.
You can apply it to that. You can apply it to that plugin.
You can apply this to the plugin.
Yes, you can apply the same principle to when you're using this plugin, or you can just write this in Notion and send the Notion file to the dev. You don't have to do this fancy thing I'm doing.
It's not plugin.
I just feel because the reason why I asked was the plugin seems a lot easier because, for example, you don't have to. It's called design token.
Design token, yeah.
Community. So yeah, you just already impute. So font family, just put the name, the weight, you put all the values. So you don't
Oh yeah,
have
yeah. The reason I'm showing this is if you understand the basics, right? It's very easier for you to use whatever plugin you probably encounter. And I don't know if those plugins, I know they show choices, but I don't know if they also show decisions. I'm not sure design token shows decisions. Let's see. I used to have it. Where are you? Is it Figma tokens? No, it's design tokens. New plugin. No, sorry. I don't know if they show decisions. I'm very sure they show choices. Well, let's just check. Plugins, community. Nope. Don't tell me I have to go through the long route I've been trying to avoid. Yes, brass plugins community. Yeah. Sorry, let me just allow somebody in. So let's see, design tokens. So let's search it. Design token. Damn. I usually just like write it manually. So let's see plugins. I think it's this 10.5k. Yeah, this should be it. Install, and yes, we have that. So right click, plugin, design tokens. Don't export design tokens. Send design tokens to URL, export. I'm not sure I even have a file to export to. No, go export to. I've only used this plugin in a while. Oh, I have to write it. That's good. Include types, network, color, border, size, spacing. I don't have this yet too. Let's see. It's not going to export. I never get them now. Which they export? Let's see. Send tokens settings.
I think this one is a different one.
Because this one they confuse me.
It's not design token, it's Figma token.
I know I have Figma tokens. Yes, so yeah, you Figma tokens. Yes, I have Figma tokens. But this one looks sexy too. But it's confusing me. Oh, now you can even export gradients. This is sweet. Oh wow. Options, light, dark. They've upgraded this in the last time I came here. Sweet. Inside name as text, inside value, inside description. Oh, you can export decisions too. Oh, this is sweet. Oh, now I suffer myself. And I'll write it manually. So let's see. Next. Okay, let me just close. Well, these things.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
When do you document your design token? Do you do it after or during your design or before?
Yeah.
Sometimes it kind of slows down my process when I do it like during the design process. I want to know.
Personally, I do it when I'm done creating my style guide. So when I'm done with my textile, I do design tokens. When I'm done with my color style, I do the design tokens. Or you can try to do everything when you are done. Right? Or if you already have a sheet containing these values for your star guide, you can do it before you start. But it depends on you. I usually do it when I'm done creating textile, color style, spacing style. I just put in the values there.
I have another question concerning the responsiveness. Aside from the time factor, is there a difference from design and doing like a responsive design manual and doing like constraints and stuff?
Like I mentioned, right, I'm the wrongest person to ask. My bosses, most companies that I've worked for, just do it individually for them and they are cool. A friend working for a company is always complaining that he has to do it manually, right? Do all the constraint, then the boss wants it to automatically recite without him having to design for desktop, tablet, and mobile. But all the companies that I've worked for, honestly 90%, all the companies that I've worked for, I usually just do the mobile, do the desktop, do the tablet if they want tablets. Usually just mobile, desktop, then you tell them your breakpoint for tablets, and that's it. So I think it mostly depends on your PM or your boss requirements. Yep. Extra large, or let me do XL. This will be sweet too. I miss working on design system. Don't you? XL is 32 pixel, I think. No, large is 32, XL is 64. Description. Extra large. Listen. And create. Ta-da! Oh yeah, so this is when you start doing tokens, you are going to design system small. So like I mentioned, you're not UDC. So as I mentioned, design system is your style guide, the code part of it, which is the code library for the components, your design token is included, your contents, accessibility people will come and check, QA reviewers, product managers, design ops, right? So the most things you usually see is usually your style guide, the code base or the code library, then content. So accessibility, I usually working with content. So it's usually content, code, and design. So when you're doing just the design part, I usually working with style guide. When you start doing documentation, creating tokens, you guys have a library on Storybook or something. You guys have a documentation. You are going into design system. So for most part, when you're working at a startup that needs to move very fast, now style guide you usually do. But when you're working in an established company that has a lot of products and they have an existing design system, you usually see a Figma file. You see a storybook file, you probably have a documentation on Zero Heights or Notion or wherever you're documenting your library. So that's like the major difference. Yeah. Okay, I have like 5 minutes more, then I run.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, please, I have a question.
Yes, Sensei.
Yeah, so the other time you were talking about when no, just now you spoke about responsiveness and you spoke about breakpoints for your mobile design. Because how do you ascertain your breakpoints for your mobile design?
Well, my breakpoint is 375 because I have memorized it and I have no, just the way I was memorizing spacing before. I have no, if you ask me why am I in 375, I have no way to back it up, right? My breakpoint for mobile is 375. My breakpoint for tab, I think is 834. For desktop, usually 1440 or 1920, right? Don't ask me how I got those numbers, but that's what I've been using since I've been designing, and nobody has had a problem with it. But I don't know why I'm using those
Oh
numbers.
wait,
Go ahead.
okay, okay. If I'm going to actually explain the values you just give me, it's more like the width size of the screen sizes. Yeah.
Yes, usually the width size.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, but I think now that you've asked that question, I have to go and I have to go and research about it. I don't know if Grit has something to contribute on that, but I have to go and research so I can back up what I'm using 375 or 834 or 1440. But so far, nobody has
Please,
asked.
when you are done with when you are done with the research, please post on Twitter. Let us read up on it.
Nobody
Please.
don't ask me since why they use 375, so I'm still interested. Somebody asked me, so yeah. So yeah, 3 more minutes.
Thank you.
Yeah, another question. Yeah, speaking of which, yes, I was here before. Um, hmm. Okay, I'll come and explore this. I wonder how much they are paying. It's not like a startup. At least 60K supposed to come out. Let's see. We're a startup. I can't small. Oh well. People are joining, but we are done. I have 3 more minutes. If you have any question, I think you can ask, or if there are no questions, we can end the session. Okay. You just dey come now. You want to ask question? Go with the end class.
Yes, Sigma 5.
The
Yeah,
Figma file.
yeah.
Hey, should I give you access to my Figma file? This is my baby. Oh. Ah, okay. Let me see.
No, just share the link so that you can.
Okay, this is like the base idea I'm trying to create a star guide for any company I'm working for or working with. Okay, I'll share that. Okay, so yeah, in the absence of other questions, thank you guys for attending my session. We'll probably have another session like this whenever.
Wait now,
Whenever.
sorry, I have a question.
Which question?